And a good Wednesday morning to you. Welcome into the Nick Craig Show, streaming live this morning on YouTube, Rumble, X, and Facebook. You can take the show with you 24/7 on demand by checking out the Nick Craig Show in your favorite podcast app. You can also listen online by visiting the website nickcraig.com. Our show this morning is brought to you by the Law Group. Visit them online at lawgroupnc.com or give them a call, 910-251-6088. We'll have more from them coming up a little bit later on in the program this morning. Well, the title of today's show is one that seemingly should not be the case. It sounds like the title is something that everybody, I thought, understood. I thought everybody was aware of and everybody knew, but apparently it is not the case. So the title of today's episode is Illegal Immigration is a Crime. I know. Sounds like a stupid, redundant, ridiculous title. I'm sure some of you are probably asking yourself that question. Nick, what a ridiculous headline or what a ridiculous title for a show. But having watched what's unfolded in North Carolina over the last couple of days, it feels like it is a discussion that needs to be had and something that needs to be talked about. Because if you go on social media, and I understand that social media is not a full-on representation of general public opinion and public sentiment. The individuals that are actively posting on social media are not the majority. They are, in fact, the minority, and they speak for a very small subset of individuals. But I have seen an incredibly large kind of group of posts over the last couple of days about illegal immigration and individuals completely incorrectly stating that coming into the United States illegally is not a federal crime. That it is somehow some sort of civil slap on the wrist penalty. And ladies and gentlemen, that is frankly not the case. You could not be any more wrong on your assertion on illegal immigration. It is in fact a federal crime to break federal law and enter the United States illegally. And you don't have to take my word for it. I mean, just go look at the U.S. Code. It's one that is not incredibly complicated, and it's not something that you need a law degree to read. Now, to understand it, you might need some higher level of education, sure, but it's for the most part pretty plainly written in English. So here it is. This is 8 U.S.C. 1325. Improper entry by alien. This is the federal code. U.S. Code, Title 8, Chapter 12, Subchapter 2. An improper time or place, avoidance of examination or inspection, misrepresentation, and concealment of facts. Any alien who enters or attempts to enter the United States at any time or place other than designated by immigration officials, or eludes examination or inspection by immigration officials, or attempts to enter or obtain entry to the United States by willfully false or misleading representation or the willful concealment of material fact shall, for the first commission of any such offense, be fined under Title 18 or imprisoned not more than 6 months, or both, and for subsequent commission of any such offense, be fined under Title 18 or imprisoned not more than 2 years, or both. That is the U.S. Code that exists that deals with the immigration, illegally coming into the United States of America. It's not a secret. It's not new. It's been the law going back to, I was researching it last night. I forgot to write it down, but the 1920s is when 8 U.S.C. 1325 was enacted. Sometime it was in the 26 or 29, something like that. It has been on the books now for close to 100 years. So if you are caught in the United States illegally, if you entered the U.S. not through a legal point of entry, which of course there are plenty on the southern border, but you entered the United States not through one of those legal ports, you did not interact with Customs and Border Protection or other federal agents that are conducting border patrol checks on the U.S.-Mexico border, which is what we're talking about this morning, and you come into the United States illegally, you are in fact committing a federal crime. It is not just a civil penalty. And I would guess that the confusion has to do with the fact that there's a fine with it, which is tends to be a little bit more common in terms of a civil penalty, but it is in fact a federal misdemeanor. Now you could say, well, it's not a felony to enter the United States, but it is a federal crime. It is a federal misdemeanor under 8 USC 1325. And so it's punishable by, as I mentioned, up to 6 months in federal jail or fines. If you're caught doing it a second time, that is a federal felony under 8 USC 1326. So first time misdemeanor, second time felony. Both are federal crimes, up to 2 years in prison. And so, of course, with both of those things, the risk of deportation is highly prominent. So crossing the border illegally is, in fact, a criminal act. That is the case. Now, I think where some of the confusion also exists is staying in the United States without lawful status. For example, if you have a work visa, 6-month work visa, and stay in the United States, that generally, not all the time from my research, and again, I'm not an attorney, I'm not pretending to be an attorney on the air this morning, but I felt the need to dig into this a little bit yesterday and earlier this morning, because I'm just seeing so much. What now I can accurately relay to you is complete and total misinformation. So if you get a work visa or a student visa and you stay in the United States, that generally is a civil violation and not a crime. But if you crossed into the United States illegally, without a visa, without some sort of permission from the United States government to enter into the U.S., there is nothing that I have read, nothing that I have seen, and no evidence to back up the claim that it is some slap on the wrist civil penalty. It is, in fact, a federal crime to do so. Yet, if you have spent any time on social media in the last couple of days in North Carolina circles, whether that's Reddit or X or Facebook groups, you have just seen people blatantly saying, it's not a crime. It's not a crime. You don't have to do this. It's not a crime. It's absurd. And some of the reaction on social media to this is absolutely astonishing. I mean, I'm looking at, and Reddit is a bastion of the left, the website reddit.com. It is so far to the left, it is insane. And you've got threads and posts on here. I mean, I was reading one this morning about how this is one of the comments on this Reddit thread. Can someone tell me, a white U.S. citizen, what papers I should be carrying? I'm getting paranoid at this point hearing about white citizens being detained. I don't have a copy of my birth certificate. I lost it a long time ago. I ordered one, but with the current backlog, I won't receive it until June 2026. This is truly terrifying. I mean, I assume that's a real comment and not somebody just trolling the left. But from what I've gathered, that is a true comment looking through this person's post history. That is the narrative that exists on the street. So let me just make sure I understand what's going on here. You have got presumably natural born U.S. citizens that are terrified, using their words, not mine, terrified that they are going to be detained and thrown out of the country by Customs and Border Protection. You've got legal citizens that are shaking in their boots this morning because they are of the mindset that when they're at their job or they're out to lunch or they're at the grocery store, that Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, or Customs and Border Protection are going to detain them and they are going to be deported from the United States of America as a natural-born U.S. citizen. Ladies and gentlemen, that is absolute insanity. That is nothing more than a direct result of fear-mongering. And that's really, I think, what you can boil a lot of this down to. It's nothing more than fear-mongering. If you are in the United States illegally, and I've got a local story from Channel 3 coming up here in a couple of minutes, the headline, "Fear Spreads as Federal Immigration Crackdowns in North Carolina Expand." Yeah, should there be some fear? If you're illegally in the country, yeah, probably. Yeah, I mean, call me a bad guy if you must. But if you're illegally in the United States, if you knowingly and willfully, which you obviously did, circumvented immigration, if you purposefully circumvented legal ports of entry and made your way into the country illegally, yeah, you probably should be a little terrified. You probably should be a little fearful. But you knowingly and willfully and willingly broke the law. You knowingly and willfully broke immigration law and came into the United States. And this is something that the left struggles with all across the board. There are very few times that they are willing to discuss actions or consequences as a result of actions. And this is one of them, plain and simple. If you thought it was a good idea or thought you had no other choice but to enter the United States illegally, there is a possibility that at some point, whether it's a CBP operation, whether it's an ICE operation, or it's just a general law enforcement operation, that you are thrown out of the country. Plain and simple. That is one of the risks of not going through the legal process to enter the United States. Call me a heartless bastard if you must, but that's the situation. You are currently breaking immigration law. You do not have what you need to legally reside in the United States. Regardless of whether you're a violent criminal or not, you are breaking the law. You have committed a federal crime under federal law, whether you're violent or not. It doesn't matter. But the reaction to this is absolute insanity. And you've got people on social media talking about how they're essentially going to lock themselves in their house for the next couple of days because they're terrified that they're going to be deported from the country. These people are legal U.S. citizens or residents. I mean, it's nuts. Yet, I don't understand. I mean, here's another comment. Any further advice specifically for checkpoints on the road while driving? I saw discussions of this happening elsewhere, and I want to be prepared if this happens here. My plan is to not roll down my window and not show my ID. Well, that's a pretty stupid idea. I mean, if a federal official, and you're driving a vehicle, if a federal official is asking you for your ID and you refuse to give it to them, you are probably going to have to deal with some repercussions to this. Plain and simple. But they, I guess, just don't want to do that anymore. Like, oh, well, we don't want to do that. If a law enforcement officer, whether it's a federal law enforcement officer, local police, a sheriff's department, if somebody that is deputized is asking you for your ID, the smart move is to show it to them. And I'm not one of these libertarian types that is of the mindset that having an ID is unconstitutional and having a driver's license is unconstitutional and, oh, I'm a sovereign citizen so I can freely travel anywhere around the United States and to hell with your license. And you're not going to catch me supporting any of those kinds of arguments at all. But this is the immediate and the gut reaction to what's going on in North Carolina right now. No, I'm not going to show my ID. I'm a legal, presumably natural-born U.S. citizen, and I'm terrified that I'm going to be deported by ICE. I just don't know how you come to that conclusion. I cannot, for the life of me, wrap my head around what you must be listening to, what you must be watching, or what you must be reading to come to the conclusion that you are at risk of being deported from the United States. It's absolute insanity. At this point, I would say, without a doubt, it is the quintessential definition of a mental illness. Plain and simple. If you are legally in the United States and you're concerned that you're going to be thrown out of the country, you are probably suffering from some very severe mental illness. If you are not in the United States illegally and you are fearful, I kind of understand it. I mean, it's the same way that if you're currently breaking the law, for example, if you're committing some sort of tax fraud in the United States, and you're fearful when tax time rolls around, you're fearful when you're hearing from the IRS. Yeah, that would make sense because you're breaking the law, right? But if you're scamming the IRS, if you're not paying your taxes or you're doing really shady things on your tax returns, I would understand it to be a logical conclusion that you might be fearful if you're hearing from the IRS. You might be fearful at the beginning of the year when tax returns are due. That would make sense because you're purposefully doing something to, in this case, defraud the United States. But if you are a law-abiding citizen paying your taxes and you're not gaming the system and you're not doing things that are maybe questionable when you're filing your tax return, why would you be fearful of the IRS? Why would you be fearful of the federal government and the Internal Revenue Service if you're not breaking the law? I mean, it's the exact same situation with this. But this is not just a random one-off comment. This is all over the place. I mean, this is all over the place. And you're seeing it grow. You're seeing the level of anxiety that is building with this. And I, honest to God, don't know where it's coming from. It's got to be completely organic on social media. That's the only thing I've been able to gather. Of course, the media is left wing. We know this, right? If you turn on the television or go to a vast majority of what would be considered or called legacy media outlets online, they are very left wing in their coverage. No question about it. But even with their inaccurate descriptions of what's going on, it does not immediately translate to natural-born U.S. citizens being terrified of Customs and Border Protection. I don't. Those are two completely different scenarios. So the only thing I've been able to gather in some of my research, if you'll call it that, kind of going through the bowels of the internet to try and read what the hell's going on here, is just social media. Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Reddit, X, Blue Sky. I'm sure I'm not on Blue Sky, I'll admit, is got to be where this anxiety is being built and where these individuals are being told that regardless of whether you're here legally or not, regardless of whether you're supposed to be in the United States or not, you need to be fearful because the Gestapo is out, which is, of course, some of the other phrasing that is being used by the left. The Gestapo that is cracking down on people who have already committed a federal crime entering the United States illegally. So let's get you up to date on where everything stands right now. We'll start off in our state's capital in Raleigh, where Immigration and Customs, or not Immigration and Customs Enforcement, but Customs and Border Protection had started operations yesterday throughout Raleigh. As you can imagine, this drew some incredible criticism. You've got, of course, Democrats out and about yelling and screaming about how ICE shouldn't be here and we don't want federal authorities here. Just all the typical things that you would expect. So reading the latest from WRAL.com, they noted that in Durham, city leaders say at least 20 immigration raids took place in a 24-hour period. County Commissioner Nita Alleman said that at least 4 people were detained within the city. There's also some conflicting information this morning about operations ending in the Raleigh-Durham Triangle region, but no official announcements have been made on that. There were a lot of school absences in across the state throughout this week as well, and so this is kind of interesting. Looking at some of the phrasing here from WRAL. So this is what they've got written on their website. What to do if you're approached by an immigration agent. The National Immigrant Justice Center published a list of things that people can do to protect themselves and defend their rights if approached by an immigration agent. It includes create a safety plan, identify emergency contacts and memorize their phone numbers, protect your children's school or daycare with an emergency contact to pick up your child, provide authorization in writing for your emergency contact to make medical and legal decisions for your child. Number 2, defend your rights. All people in the United States have constitutional protections, including the right to remain silent when questioned or arrested by immigration officials. Oh, that's good to know. So there are a couple of their what to do if you are approached by an immigration agent. I mean, this just seems a little bit extreme. But looking through this website, this immigrantjustice.org, the National Immigration Justice Center. This is some of the same phrasing that they've got going on there. And as you can imagine, this is another complete out of control left-wing group. And so as they say, defend your rights. All persons in the United States have constitutional protections. Being stopped by immigration officials or other law enforcement can be frightening, but it is important to stay calm. During any encounter with law enforcement, it's important to do the following. Stay calm and don't run. Argue, resist, or fight the officers, even if you believe your rights are being violated or you're being treated unfairly. Keep your hands where the police can see them and tell them if you need to reach into a glove compartment or for a wallet to show your papers. Don't lie about your status or provide false documentation. Now, hold on a second here. WRL didn't include this in their article. Don't lie about your status? Huh. That's interesting. Don't lie. Well, that's kind of defeats the whole purpose here, because the whole point of la resistance, the whole point of what we've seen over the last couple of days is if you're here illegally in the United States, to hell with federal immigration law, you should be allowed to stay. And God forbid that you're held to account for the things that you've done. So it's interesting to see this very left-wing immigrant justice organization saying, don't lie, don't provide false documentation. Right? It's probably not going to work out very well for you. If you're pulled over at a traffic stop, ask if the officer is from the police department or immigration. Immigration officers often identify themselves as police, but they are not police. Ask if they are from Immigration and Customs Enforcement or Customs and Border Protection. If they are immigration officials, follow these guidelines about what information to provide. If you are a U.S. citizen or have lawful immigration status, show your passport, legal permanent resident card, work permit, or other documentation of your status. If you are over the age of 18, you should carry your papers with you at all times. I think that's insane. I don't believe that there's any legitimate reason that you need to be carrying around a passport with you at all times in the United States. If you are undocumented, here we go. You have the right to remain silent and do not have to discuss your immigration or citizen statusship with police, immigration agents, or other officials. Anything you tell an officer can later be used against you in immigration court. So don't you see the issue that's created here? If you're undocumented, you have the right to remain silent, which is accurate, and not discuss your immigration or citizenship status. That's also true. But then at the same time, if a Customs and Border Protection agent says, are you a U.S. citizen, and you just sit in your car and with your hands on the wheel and just look straight ahead and ignore them, they ask you another question, they ask you for more information, and you sit there and say nothing, there's probably a pretty strong likelihood that you are going to be detained. Because at that point, you are now ignoring requests from federal officials. It is accurate that you don't have to provide it. But the same way that if you are in a traffic stop and you're one of these sovereign citizen folks and you say, I'm not going to show you my driver's license, you're going to get your ass pulled out of the car and you're going to be handcuffed. Plain and simple. Now, this is not about, whether the Constitution allows this or not. This is not a constitutional protection conversation that's going on. As B.I. Carlton puts in our Rumble live chat, it's common sense. Plain and simple. No, you're right. If you're undocumented and you're in the United States, you don't have to speak to immigration officials. However, what's going to happen is you're going to be arrested, you're going to be detained, and you're going to probably be deported out of the country. Plain and simple. I mean, it's nuts. It's absolute insanity to see the reaction of this. And then it goes through, if ICE knocks on your door, don't open it. Officers must have a warrant. If you are outdoors and think you see immigration officials, move to a safe space indoors. If you are a U.S. citizen and feel safe to do so, record the activity with your phone and write down any relevant information about your witnesses, always being careful not to interfere or otherwise obstruct the operations. Do not post unverified information on social media or interfere with the investigation or otherwise put yourself in harm's way. Of course, record the situation, right? That's the way the left goes about this. Record the situation so that you can post it on Facebook and claim that people are being stolen off the streets of the United States so that you can try and gin up public support for individuals who are breaking the law and are illegally in the country. Very, very, this whole thing is just, I think, very odd. Not the immigration operations that are conducting. I don't think those are weird at all. I think it's exactly what Donald Trump said he was going to do when he was running in 2024. And lo and behold, I know This is a shocking thing for many folks on the left to hear. He's following through on what he said he was going to do. And let's just take a step back for a minute and understand why this is the issue that it is right now. Because once again, this is a completely self-inflicted issue that Democrats have created. And let me explain. During the Biden administration, they were woefully ignoring immigration law. They were woefully ignoring federal law that is on the books as that we just read through, 8 USC 1325, that deals with illegal entry into the United States. They just flat out ignored that. They ignored it. Joe Biden put his wonderful vice president, Kamala Harris, in charge of it. She did nothing. I think she visited the border maybe twice during her tenure as the vice president. They were waving the green flag at the border for individuals to come into the country illegally, and lo and behold, they did. The official numbers, unofficial numbers, potentially millions of people came into the United States illegally, unchecked by the Biden administration. Others were given a stamp into the United States, told to report to an immigration court in 2, 3, 6, 8 months, didn't do that, and now they are in fact overstaying and are illegally in the United States. And so that issue unfolded. It went on for years under the Biden administration. That turned out not to be a very popular political issue, I guess. The public across the board wasn't really a fan of watching this go on. And I had kind of an interesting perspective on all of this at the time, because being a conservative, being on the right side of the political aisle, we had been talking about this immigration issue under the Biden admin from the very early on days. I mean, we were tracking those numbers month by month. We were talking about it, and I explicitly remember talking about it very frequently when I hosted the morning show on Wave. I mean, it was something we talked about a lot, and it was fascinating to watch more legacy traditional media outlets begin to talk about it. For a long period of time, unless you were watching Fox News, listening to conservative talk radio, or reading more conservative news websites, you would have had no idea what was going on. I mean, literally zero idea. NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, MSNBC, none of them were talking about it at all. They were just, the worst thing that media can do is not misreport something. It's to not report it at all. And that is exactly what they did for a long time. It went on for well over a year. Then the media coverage started to trickle in. I think the public reaction when more and more individuals outside of mainstream media who wasn't telling them what was going on, when more and more individuals found out that on any given month, hundreds of thousands of people were crossing into the United States illegally. When they started learning that, they had a visceral reaction to it. They're like, what? You're telling me in the month of June, 120,000 plus people crossed into the United States illegally? And that's, of course, an estimate because we didn't actually see these individuals. People started getting really pissed off. And that forced the mainstream media to start talking about the issue. They could no longer ignore it. They could no longer bury it and whistle and walk the other way and hope that nobody would talk about it. The public started finding out, and I think that was in large part due to social media. That was in large part due to alternative media that was digging into this issue. So this went on for years. Biden and his cadre of winners didn't do anything about it. They largely ignored the problem. Joe Biden, for the vast majority of his administration, was MIA. You didn't hear from him, but maybe a couple of times every few months. I mean, it was very sparse in terms of questions that he would take and everything. So the issue was one that this administration just did not deal with well at all. The American people were pissed off about it. Donald Trump, of course, came flying back onto the scene and turned this into a major cornerstone of his campaign. That we are not going to sit by and we are not going to stand for mass illegal immigration into the United States. And turns out that's a pretty popular political opinion. Turns out that's a pretty popular idea amongst the vast majority of the American public, regardless of whether they're Republicans, Democrats, or self-described moderate unaffiliated voters. And so the media tried to hide it. The Democrats tried to hide it. The public found out about it. Henry's, we got a comment coming in on our Rumble live chat. The public started learning about it from fake news when the hotels in New York City were filling up in the incident at Martha's Vineyard. Exactly. I mean, it started being too big of an issue for the media to hide from because it was being talked about everywhere else. It was all over social media. That was in large part due to Texas Governor Greg Abbott and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, who were paying to have these individuals bused or flown to these major Democrat cities like New York City, like Chicago, areas like Martha's Vineyard, where, of course, their reaction was, get the hell out of Martha's Vineyard. We don't want you here. So I say all of this, and I go around in a circle on all of this to say this was another self-inflicted issue by the Democrats. Had Joe Biden, had Kamala Harris, had the other individuals within his administration, the head of DHS, the head of ICE, the head of CBP, if they had dealt with this issue back in 2022, for example, we would not be in this place right now. But as we now know, as we are well past 2022, they chose not to do that. They largely ignored the issue publicly. They largely did. That got a lot of Americans riled up, and it turned into a major campaign issue for President Donald Trump. And he's doing exactly what he said he was going to do. That there were going to be mass deportations under the Trump administration. Now, you can say you don't agree with that. You can say that you don't like that. Fine. Fine opinion to have. I'm not going to shout you down for having your opinion. But one thing you can't say is that you didn't see this coming. One thing you can't say is that you are shocked by what you're seeing unfold in Charlotte and Raleigh. That is a very disingenuous thing to say because it was not hidden. It was very widely discussed. It was one of the largest, if not the largest issue, and it's kind of hard with the economy being up there as well. It was either the first or second issue that drove people to the polls in November of 2024. So it's yet another self-inflicted wound by the Democrats. Donald Trump said, I've got a solution to it. We're going to start cracking down on this crap. If you're here in the United States illegally, you're going to get deported. You're going back to where you came from. We're a country of law and order. We are a country of rules. And if you choose to willfully and knowingly break those, you're going to have to pay the consequences. That resonated with a lot of people. That's why he won 7 of 7 swing states and won the popular vote for the first time in 20 years for a Republican. That doesn't happen by accident. That doesn't happen because your ideas are crazy and insane and nobody supports them. The American public supports legal immigration. What they do not support is illegal immigration. They're not a fan of it at all. And so if Democrats that are so pissed off and concerned about what's going on and, oh my God, Donald Trump is an authoritarian, the freaking Gestapo is here rounding up brown people who aren't legally in the country, maybe a little bit of self-reflection, guys. If you were so concerned about this issue, maybe you should have cared about illegal immigration while it was happening. See, once again, they're not concerned about the action. They're concerned about the consequence. They're not concerned that it is their failed policies that allowed this situation to exist. No. But it's now my fault. It's now your fault. It's now Trump's fault that Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, and the Democrats waved the green flag at the U.S.-Mexico border and allowed pretty much anybody into the United States. Drug cartel members, hardened gang members, Tren de Aragua, MS-13, the Sinaloa drug cartel, violent criminals, human traffickers, rapists, murderers. It didn't matter. Come on in. The water's warm. Come on in. That's exactly what went on for years. Donald Trump and the sane side of the American public said, to hell with this. We don't support this. This is not what the United States of America is. And now you're seeing the results of your actions play out. People who are legally in the United States of America are facing deportation. regardless of whether they're a violent criminal or not. Plain and simple. And I don't have an issue with it. The same way that if I am speeding on Interstate 40 and I get pulled over, I can be as pissed as I want that the speed limit's only 70 miles an hour. But at the end of the day, I was the one that was speeding. The speed limit signs are posted. If I get pulled over by SHP, that's my freaking problem to deal with. It's not the state's fault. It's not anybody else's fault. It's mine. That's called accountability. That's called accountability. And that's something that the left and Democrats just frankly, seemingly do not have at all anymore. Zero whatsoever. I've got some interesting continued information coming up on the immigration discussion here. An interview that WWAY did with a local immigrant attorney, a resolution passed by the Mecklenburg County commissioners, plus an interesting comment from Stephen Miller, who's the deputy chief of staff for President Donald Trump. This is pretty interesting, and it's got a North Carolina tie to it. We'll get into all of those details coming up here in just a couple of minutes. But before that, I want to let you know that our show is only made possible thanks to Melissa Gott and her amazing team over at the Law Group here in Wilmington. When legal challenges arise, make sure you put your trust in the Law Group. Since 2003, their experienced attorneys have provided high-quality, affordable legal services across Eastern North Carolina. Whether you're facing a divorce, navigating real estate transactions, or maybe you're in a position where you need a strong defense, the Law Group has your back. Their dedicated team ensures your questions are answered and issues are resolved as quickly as possible. Great news, folks. They're located in downtown Wilmington and just a phone call away at 910-251-6088, or you can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com. Give them a call, 910-251-6088, or their website, lawgroupnc.com. The Law Group, experience and dedication you can rely on for any legal challenges, maybe even any legal questions that you're dealing with across southeastern North Carolina. Give the Law Group a call, 910-251-6088, or fill out the contact form on their website, lawgroupnc.com. We appreciate Melissa Gott and her team and their continued support here of the Nick Craig Show. All right, we'll grab a quick break. On the other side, we'll continue the discussion as Customs and Border Protection operations do continue throughout the state of North Carolina, Raleigh, and Charlotte as the Nick Craig Show rolls on a Wednesday morning, streaming live on YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and available 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. And a good Wednesday morning to you. Welcome back to the Nick Craig Show. Thanks for joining us live or after the fact via podcast as we continue our conversation and analysis this morning of Customs and Border Protection DHS operations that have been taking place throughout the Tar Heel State since Saturday. They started in Charlotte and then have worked their way up to Raleigh, where protesters were out in the streets last night. And so there was an interesting local interview that happened. WWAY Channel 3 here in Wilmington spoke with immigration attorney Vanessa Gonzalez, who said, quote, my clients are feeling nervous, anxious, terrified. Even the ones that are in lawful status are concerned about their everyday activities. We're seeing the overall evaporation of people's civil rights, not just limited to undocumented people, but folks in a variety of immigration statuses across the United States. And she ends by saying this: seeing the communities that are targeted tend to have a political tinge to them, and those that are either full of blue or Democrat leadership, or those who do not support the current administration's ICE priorities. We have a high mixed status population that is definitely driven on the type of sectors that we have here, agriculture. And so I thought about this when I was reading it last night. And this has, of course, been the political line from Democrats. Trump is targeting Democrat cities because they're Democrats. So I got thinking to myself, maybe there's another reason that Donald Trump is targeting cities like Chicago. So let's take a look here. There is a website called CIS.org. It stands for the Center for Immigration Studies. And they have a map that is called a map of sanctuary cities, counties, and states. And so you pull up this map and you look at the places across the state of North Carolina that are self-described sanctuary cities, counties. In Raleigh, back in 2018, will not honor ICE detainers non-cooperative with ICE. You look at Charlotte, same thing. Mecklenburg County Sheriff Gary McFadden will not honor ICE detainers. So do you think maybe that is part of the reason why Customs and Border Protection and ICE are targeting Charlotte and Raleigh? Maybe the fact that they are self-described sanctuary cities? That you've got county commissioners and city council members that have claimed that we want to be a sanctuary for individuals who are here? I mean, just use a little bit of critical thinking on this. Maybe that's part of the reason. But, you know, that's too logical, so that probably isn't going to be the case. So here's an interesting thing as we work down this. Here's a headline over at WBTV. 30,000 students absent Monday from Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools despite initial reports, according to officials. Over 30,000 Charlotte-Mecklenburg students were absent on Monday, officials said, an increase of nearly 9,500 from what was originally reported. Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools on Tuesday said that 30,399 students were absent from school on Monday, November the 17th. Officials initially reported 20,935 students were absent. According to the district, the numbers of absences were updated overnight Monday into Tuesday, with that new number being well over 30,000. The data still needs to be finalized by the state, according to the district. Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools did not say whether the absences were connected to Border Patrol operations underway in the city. However, we know that they are. So here's an interesting little bit of analysis and insight from Stephen Miller, who, of course, is the chief of staff for President Donald Trump. He writes on X, so a conservative estimate is that 1/7 of a major southern public school district is here illegally. I'm going to admit, I hadn't thought about that. The idea that 30+ thousand students did not show up to school Monday in Mecklenburg County. What does that say about the school's population? What does that say about the immigration status of tens of thousands of students in Charlotte-Mecklenburg schools? This is a great point that is brought up by Stephen Miller. And it's one that I generally hadn't thought about. I just kind of brushed it off as, as being noted in our chat, any excuse not to go to school. But boy, I thought this was a really interesting insight from Stephen Miller. He published this a couple of days ago. And by the way, that number would be higher than 1 in 7 because that's when the number was estimated to be 20,000. So it's probably more like 1 in 6 individuals within the Charlotte-Mecklenburg school system. That's a concerning stat in itself, is it not? So you've got now tens of thousands of students throughout the state in Charlotte and in Wake County, I'm sure Durham as well, just not showing up for school because of what? Again, if you're legally in the United States, what is your concern? And I'm not saying this because I'm a conservative, but if I have no concern whatsoever that I'm going to be deported out of the United States, to say that this is not a concern on my mind is almost an understatement because it's not even something I think about. Now, again, I'm not ignorant to the fact that if you are, in fact, illegally in the country, you probably are concerned. You probably are terrified. You probably are panicking over what's going on. But again, that's a decision that you made. That's a decision that you played out. That wasn't my decision. That wasn't Donald Trump's decision. That wasn't CBP's decision. That wasn't ICE's decision. That was your decision. And so as you see all of these protesters, as you see all of the outrage over what's going on in North Carolina, it's kind of an interesting thing to ask. And of course, I caught this. This was a still shot in the this video over at WRAL about the federal immigration officials taking place in the U.S. in Raleigh. This picture, this still shot, perfectly describes the issue here. What do you have here? 3 white individuals that are definitely above 50 years old, standing out in downtown Raleigh with signs that say ICE out. And this is the same group of individuals that are at the No Kings protest. It is a bunch of self-loathing, middle-aged, if not older, white liberals. And that's where the outrage is. And this video, I think, perfectly describes, when you look through the crowd, that the group of individuals that are hooting and hollering, yelling and screaming about ICE. I mean, it's so unbelievably predictable. It's always the same group. This is the Donald Trump is a racist group. This is the Donald Trump is a Nazi group. And it's, wow, lo and behold, surprising to me, this is the abolish ICE, abolish Customs and Border Protection, abolish immigration law group as well. No big surprise there. So last night in Mecklenburg County, you had a resolution from the Mecklenburg County Board of Commissioners. It's a little bit lengthy, but I want to read through this. It's affirming constitutional protections and expressing support from our immigrant community. Now, there's a bunch of whereases here. This is how resolutions are written in government. So I'll just read the first whereas, and we'll go through the rest. Whereas Mecklenburg County is one of the largest and most diverse counties in North Carolina, home to foreign-born residents from more than 187 countries who collectively speak over 205 languages. And since 2000, the county's immigrant population has grown by more than 126%, now comprising approximately 16.5% of all residents, more than 150,000 people, and contributing significantly to the county's cultural, economic, education, and civil vitality. Immigrants and immigrant households, including mixed-status families, play vital roles in driving innovation, supporting small businesses, strengthening the workforce, and reinvesting in our local economy. The United States Constitution guarantees due process, equal protection, and freedom from unreasonable search and seizures to all persons within the United States, regardless of natural origin or immigration status. And the 5th and 14th Amendment protects every individual from being deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And the United States Supreme Court has held that, quote, the Constitution applies to all persons within the United States, including aliens. Whereas racial or ethnic profiling is unacceptable, unlawful, and inconsistent with constitutional guarantees, and accountability measures such as the wearing of body cameras, visible name identification, and clear organization insignia, and the prohibition of face coverings except for medical necessary reasons are essential safeguards that promote community trust and oversight. It then goes on to page 2 to say, now therefore it be resolved that the Mecklenburg County Board of Commissioners affirm its responsibility consistent with the First Amendment to voice the concerns and needs of the communities it represents. It reaffirms that Mecklenburg County complies with all state and federal laws. Well, hold on a second here. Hold on. So this whole show resolution, which is what this is about how awful and terrible the immigration policy is of this administration. Yet, therefore, be it resolved that Mecklenburg County complies with all state and federal laws. So, Mecklenburg County is, in fact, admitting that it is a federal, there is, in fact, a federal law on the books that prohibits illegal entry into the United States. It seems to kind of brush over the whole point on this. The Mecklenburg County supports legitimate targeted law enforcement efforts aimed at dismantling criminal organizations while insisting that such actions respect constitutional rights and remain steadfast in its commitment to protecting the safety, dignity, and constitutional protections for all county residents. Be it further resolved that the board urges U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, U.S. Border Patrol, the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department, and the Mecklenburg County Sheriff's Office to collaborate to the extent permitted by law on approaches that protect public safety while safeguarding the well-being and humanity of families and children. And that the board calls for a clear, consistent, and constitutional sound process for any enforcement activity conducted within Mecklenburg County, including timely and transparent notifications of who was taken into custody, under what legal authority, where they were transported, and the justification for such actions. Mecklenburg County will continue to collaborate with trusted community partners and legal service organizations to offer assistance to the extent possible to ensure residents have accurate information or support. So that's what's going on in Mecklenburg County. So what's happening is awful and terrible. We've heard this. That's not anything new. But we admit that federal law prohibits illegal entry into the United States. We admit that as a municipal government, which is what Mecklenburg County would be, that they have a constitutional obligation to follow state and federal law. So it's nothing more than gaslighting from Mecklenburg County. It's nothing more than pandering to their immigrant community, which they say makes up 16.5% of their population, pandering to their immigrant community. The reality is very simple. Mecklenburg County, hell, the state of North Carolina has no control over federal immigration law. Zero. Doesn't matter what the General Assembly does, doesn't matter what the governor does. They cannot stop federal officials from enforcing federal law. They don't have the ability to do that. As much as they cry and they scream and they yell profanities and cuss at law enforcement and scream about this and scream about that, it's federal law. And for Democrats, this is my plea to you. If you're so upset about what's going on, you should have changed the immigration law back in 2022 if you wanted to. Plain and simple. If you didn't want people to be held to account for laws that have been on the books for close to 100 years at this point, if you didn't care enough about it then you really don't have, to me, any sort of leverage or ground to care about it now. If the immigration system is so broken, that's the meme that you've heard from Josh Stein and Roy Cooper and other Democrats. It's so broken. Oh my God, we got to fix the immigration system. You guys have had your shot to do so. And I'm not saying that Republicans are have done a phenomenal job with it. But let's not pretend that it's one party rule in the United States. Let's not pretend that just a couple of years ago, Democrats had control of the Senate, the House, and the Oval Office. So if immigration was such a big freaking concern, maybe they should have done something about it. But that's just my political thought and opinion on it. So it remains uncertain this morning exactly how much longer these operations will take place. We'll keep you up to date as the news continues to roll out right here on the Nick Craig Show. I do want to remind folks that if you are interested in supporting the show financially and getting access to some bonus content, including daily show notes, besides yesterday, there was the internet issue that we were dealing with yesterday morning, had our Patreon service unavailable. You can support the show and get access to those daily show notes over at patreon.com/Nick Craig. The show, you can support it $5, $10, $15 a month, whatever a dollar amount you think makes sense. Head on over to patreon.com/Nick Craig. Well, that's going to do it for a Wednesday edition of the Nick Craig Show. Thanks to Melissa Gott and the team over at the Law Group for their continued support. You can visit them online at lawgroupnc.com or give them a call 910-251-6088. The Nick Craig Show streams live weekday mornings, 7 a.m., YouTube, Rumble, X, Facebook, and is available 24/7 wherever you get your podcasts. We're back here tomorrow morning for The Nick Craig Show.